Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, where we discuss everything in the Major League Baseball world. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
My name is Ben.
And spring training is officially going to be soon upon us.
Next Tuesday, 6 days away.
Yeah, exactly. Spring training. Wow, I can't believe... Man, the offseason just came and went. We got the World Baseball Classic coming up, so we will talk about that a little bit later on in the show. We're going to talk about a little bit of the Caribbean series between Puerto Rico and Mexico. We got a couple of under-the-radar free agent deals that occurred over the past week. But one of the big stories, Major League Baseball, was... The league has proposed some rule changes, including the strike zone and intentional walks. If you don't know, they wanted to change the strike zone, which could help hitters but can hurt pitchers, and they want to change the way that intentional walks come about. Of course, these changes will be talked about. They have to be talked about soon because it's just 2.5 weeks away from spring training. The union is currently filling out the process of players on the proposed the changes. So it's going to have to happen sooner rather than later with spring training soon. And, the MLB's proposal of the strike zone would raise the lower part of the strike zone to the top of the hitter's knees. And for the intentional walks, it would end probably the long-standing practice of, the pitcher throwing 4 soft tosses outside the strike zone. Instead, a team could just signal the umpire that it wants to issue an intentional walk, and the hitter would just be sent directly to first base. So basically, the intentional walk, I think it's more of a part of the timing of the game, because that's the thing that Major League Baseball is trying to improve on, is the speed of the game. And the strike zone, I can honestly see that happening. I know because, a lot of umpires have been been more open to the strike zone. Some umpires have bigger strike zones. Some of them have tighter strike zones. Intentional walks, I can actually see that being a legit thing happening. The strike zone, I don't know about that because it could hurt a lot of pitchers, and it's going to help more towards the hitters. So I do think that's something that could take a little bit more of a process, but the intentional walks, I actually do see that happening because of the timing of the game.
I think the intentional walk one is a good idea because really it's kind of silly anyway. You're going to force the guy to throw 4 pitches. You talk about the timing of the game, and there's some truth to that. But for me, I think it's more so, why even have it? If you're going to intentionally walk someone, why not just say, I'm going to put him on first base, have him walk down there, as opposed to having the catcher stand out there with his arm out, have the pitcher throw 4 soft pitches to signify that he's going to walk him. Just point that he's going to first base and walk him. I mean, it's simple. I mean, there has been a few instances, and I amplify a few, where the pitcher throws a wild pitch during an intentional walk scenario where a runner maybe goes up to second base if they have runners on the corners, or runner comes home. That's very, very few times that's happened. So why even have that be the case? That could be the one knock on it. That could be the one thing that makes them say, well, I mean, they still have to throw the ball. Things could happen, etc. That could be the one thing that takes them away from doing that. But I don't see that really being the case. And I think this should happen. Talk about the speed of the game. It speeds up the game. it's kind of one of those times where it's like, oh, they're going to walk them. I'm going to go get another beer or like get some more chips or something. So that's something that they could split up the game. Talk about the strike zone. And I'm not a fan of it, but I would not be surprised if this gets passed for a couple of reasons. Number one, primarily, what's wrong with baseball? It's not entertaining. What do people want to see?
They want to see home runs.
They want to see more runs. Perfect. How do you get more runs? You expand the strike zone. You're forcing people to swing at more pitches, more of those close borderline pitches. So if you're forcing people to swing more chance of a hit, more chance of a home run, it makes perfect sense. But at the same time, these pitchers who are so good at like painting the corners are going to get even better because they have more play to work with. I mean, they have more of a zone there to throw a strike. So it can kind of play both ways. I don't think that will be passed because it's still going to be really an opinion. What's a ball? What's a strike? Everyone's going to vary differently. Every umpire is going to be different. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think the walk one is a lock. I think it's a home run, no pun intended. But I think the strike zone one's a little tougher.
Yeah, the strike zone is probably going to take some time for that one to be processed. But getting back to the intentional walk rule change, I think that one is going to happen. Because honestly, though, intentional walks don't even happen a lot anyway. We're kind of like in an age where it has declined. We're very past the Barry Bonds days when that used to happen literally every time he stepped up to the plate. But there was 932 intentional walks all last season. Or another way you can put it is 2.6 every 2.6 games. It's about like a minute of dead time per walk. So that is MLB sees that, when the timing of 4 meaningless pitches can eliminate time of the game. And for the rule changes, I do agree with you to an extent that it will produce more runs. I actually think it can actually help a lot of ground ball pitchers like that because, they have a little more to work with. It is actually intended to produce more balls in play, more base runners, more offensive action. Literally, I think we can agree that baseball is probably not the most. It's not. I think so. I think honestly, I'm a huge baseball fan, but I don't think baseball is the most exciting sport ever. I do love watching the game, but let's just be real. It's not as exciting as the NFL. It's not as exciting as the NBA. I have to agree with that. The game is just not exciting when you compare it to other sports. Just look at the World Series Game 7. What was so exciting about that? The teams were scoring runs. That was why it was such a good game. You saw Raji Davis tie the game up with a 2-run home run at 9. And that's what made Game 7 so really good. Like, it got everyone's attention because both of those teams scored more than 9 runs. Both of them scored 9 runs, and that's what people want to see. They want to see more runs scored, but the way that the game has evolved, it's become more of a pitcher's league of some sort.
I do agree with you there, and I think that's why baseball's trying to change it, although I think teams are not going to be so happy to this one. I honestly don't, because most fans don't like the classic pitcher's duel, but there's some that do like that.
Well, I'm a huge fan of a pitcher's duel. That's just me.
Yeah, me, not so much. I mean, I've gone to games live where it's the 7th inning and it's 1-0, and I'm just like, geez. Like, I mean, I give these guys credit for literally just slamming the door on every guy that steps up to the plate, but, like, I want to see something. Like, give me a double or, like, give me something to get excited about. With the strike zone being so far stretched out, you're putting a lot more balls in play. That means more room for errors, more gap shots, maybe some home runs, some doubles. I mean, it gives you more of a chance to score runs, and that's what baseball is all about, and that's what's entertaining. That's what brings people to watch the game. It's kind of sad. I do agree with you there. You're going to have more higher ERAs probably, and more of these lopsided 10-6 games. Which, I mean, same thing happened with hockey. They're trying to do the same thing with hockey. Now they have no ties where they have now the overtime shootouts in hockey, and it's added more excitement to the game, and that's really the goal is is money drives everything, and ratings drive everything, and you got to find a way to get people in.
Yeah, and I do think the reason why they want more teams to score more runs is basically we have a lot of games where they go to extra innings. They go to like 15 extra innings. I think baseball doesn't want games to last that long, so to speak. So I do think they kind of want more runs to score before regulation even ends. Because when you watch a baseball game and it's like the 15th inning, you're eventually probably going to want to turn the game off because the game is so long and dragged. But I just think they want to bring a more audience in because they're competing. I think we forget that they compete with the other 3 sports leagues in America: NHL, the NBA, and probably the most popular sport in America is the NFL. We kind of saw how the NFL had a real good weekend this past Sunday. We all saw that. I'm not saying MLB's trying to compete with that because even the NBA can't. But I do think this is another way to drive a more audience, and I do think with the fact that Game 7 was probably one of the best baseball games ever. I do think that's a reason that they want to bring more audience because they know people want to see more runs scored. They just do.
I think that's what they're going with here, but left to be seen. We're not really sure how it's going to play out, but I think the walk one's for sure. The strike zone one, to me, not so much, but we'll have to wait and see.
All right, well, we're going to take our first break here, and we're going to get into some free agent deals. Some under-the-radar deals, so to speak, that happened over the past week when we get back to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, and it's time to get into some free agent deals that occurred over the past week. Actually, I think one of the big ones was a Giant going to the Dodgers, and that's Sergio Romo. He decided to agreed to sign a 1-year deal with the Dodgers. I don't think he's officially signed it yet, but he is going to the Dodgers. I think he actually grew up a Dodger fan. I remember there was a commercial with him and his dad like a while back when he was with the Giants, and his dad would be like, "Really? San Francisco? It's not LA." So I do think he was part of being a Dodger fan growing up. But I'm not surprised. I think he can be really good for that bullpen. He doesn't have to be the closer. And not only that, I think that bullpen was a little more competitive for the Giants than the Dodgers, and I do think that's a good spot for him to be a part of the Dodger blue.
I think more so than anything, this is kind of we want insight on the Giants. Because Romo...
You really think that happens?
I really do believe that happens in all sports. Yeah, I do. Because I think Romo's had success last year, not so much. He didn't really do too well last year, but he's had success before. And I think more so he's kind of fallen off the rails a little bit. He can contribute a little bit, maybe be one of those guys, because he has one of those kind of sidearm deliveries anyway. So I think he can maybe be one of those guys like a righty for a righty, kind of like how the Giants do with Javier Lopez right now, lefty for lefty, and sort of how they jam the inside on the right-handed hitters for right-handed pitchers and lefties for lefties. So I think he can be kind of that role for the Dodgers. And then maybe if they have some injuries, maybe a 7th-inning guy, 8th-inning guy. So I do like the move in that regard. But I really do think there's some sort of give me some insight. You have been with this team who's our arch rival for the last few years. You know how these hitters approach the plate and everything, and give us some insight with these key opportunistic moments. I really do think that could be the case.
Yeah, and I do like this deal for Sergio Romo and get his kind of like his career back on track. The thing I didn't like what the Dodgers did this year, I didn't like when they traded Jose De Leon, one of their top pitching prospects, for Logan Forsythe. I feel like they should have got a lot more for Jose De Leon, to be honest with you. I don't like that at all. I just don't. I just don't. But a couple free agent deals. We got Mike Napoli, who agreed to a 1-year deal with the Texas Rangers. Pending the physical, of course, that would become official. Mike Napoli have one of the best of his best years ever. You know, he set career highs in homers, RBIs. Even though he had a career high in strikeouts, he still had a pretty good year with 34 homers and 101 RBIs. I do think he adds to an already vicious Texas Rangers lineup.
I mean, he did set a career high in strikeouts as well at 194, but this is going to be his third time playing for the Texas Rangers, so the Rangers must have a lot of faith in him because he keeps going there and then he's leaving. He leaves for Boston, then he leaves for the Cleveland Indians, now he's back. So, I mean, they must have a lot of faith in him. He's 35. He can maybe play some DH, play some first base, catcher if need be. That's where he kind of started. But I guess that's an okay move. There's not much left out there. All that really is left out there, for the most part, what we're going to be talking about, is these guys who are just power hitters. They either hit a home run or they strike out. And in regards to that next guy, Jeremiah, is Chris Carter. And he has a new team. He is a part of the New York Yankees. He signs a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. Remember, Carter led the NL in home runs last year at 41, but he also led the NL in strikeouts at 206. So this guy, he either literally hits a home run or he kind of goes down swinging.
Yeah, and I'm actually surprised that Chris Carter went here because, the Yankees signed Matt Holliday to probably be the designated hitter. They got Greg Bird coming back to man first base. So where's Chris Carter going to play at? Like, is he just?
He's a backup.
So he's just going to be a backup. This is a guy that hit 41 home runs. Like,
maybe when they go to an NL park, he can be like a pinch hitter, DH role, but I think this is maybe one of those depth moves. They're just adding depth definitely. Because you do have the chance for injury always. Holiday was injured last year. He's getting up there in age. He's definitely past his prime, which we saw with the Rockies. So he has a chance to get injured, and I think this is really just kind of one of those depth moves. The Yankees are not afraid to sign anyone. They have the most money in baseball, and it's only a $3.5 million deal for 1 year, so it's not like they're eating a really giant contract. So it's just a depth move. I like it for that regard.
Okay, and I can see I'm talking about for like fantasy baseball reasons. I don't like it. You can't.
I mean, he'd only be one of those guys that you would pick up.
He's a good player for Roto leagues, probably the category leagues. So probably one of those. But we also have another under the radar kind of deal that kind of didn't really get talked about. That's Daniel Descasco agrees to a $1.5 million deal for 1 year with the Diamondbacks. David Descalso was actually he was a really good utility guy for Colorado Rockies. You know, he hit 12 doubles with 264 average, 38 RBIs in 99 games. So he was one of their top guys on the bench. He's one of their top depth guys. He is one of two players since 2010 with 95 or more starts at second base, 132, shortstop 141, and 97 starts at third base. So you can play this guy anywhere for that reason. I do think this is a very good move for the Diamondbacks, who intend to get even better in a very competitive NL West, because I do think there's going to be some breakout teams in there. I think the Rockies are a potential breakout team. The Giants are, I think they're going to, they're in the playoffs last year. I think they're going to get back to World Series contention, especially with that pitching rotation. You got the Dodgers, who are always going to be in it. So the Diamondbacks, this is one of them, one of those moves that gets their bench a whole lot better.
Well, I think there's a clear role for Descalso, and it's a gopher. Go for him at third base. He needs a day off. Go for him at shortstop. He needs a day off. Go for him at second base. He's injured. He can really just play all over the field. Really, the difference total opposites here of Chris Carter. Really has one role. He's either going to hit a home run or strike out. Descalso can be one of those good, solid utility guys that just one of those good pieces to your team, a nice addition. I really do like the deal for Arizona. I feel like they're probably, well, really them and San Diego, but I feel like they're definitely on the bottom of the NL West. And there's a lot of tough teams. The Giants are improved, the Dodgers are improved, the Rockies are improved. So they really have to do something to work their way back up there. And I think it's a good move because he's definitely really, really useful because he can play all over the field.
He's a versatile player. And I do like that move for the Diamondbacks, who need a lot of help to compete with the Giants, the Dodgers. I think the Rockies are actually going to be a very potential wildcard team. I just think if they can stay healthy, they can be a playoff team. I just really do think so. But we'll talk about that when we talk about the NL West when we get to our division previews, which I think will happen next week.
Probably going to start that next week since it is the start of spring training next week.
So I can't wait. Baseball season soon upon us. And we're going to take our last break. We're actually going to talk about the World Baseball Classic. And I think we're going to talk about the Caribbean Series as well when we get back to the Going to Meet Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Right, welcome back to the Going to Meet Concepts Baseball Podcast, and it is early February. We're actually getting closer to the World Baseball Classic. I believe is happening next month in March. So before the Baseball Classic, begins, Puerto Rico beat Mexico in 10 innings for the Caribbean Series title last night. They won for the first time since 2000 with a 1-0 victory. Jonathan Morales sacrificed fly in the bottom of the 10th, accounted for the only run. And man, so this game was 0-0 practically the entire game. And Puerto Rico, they started out 1-3 in the first round of the tournament because they kind of have their own little tournament for the Baseball Classic, to like warm them up. And then they earned their first Caribbean Series championship, and it's the first one since 1987. So Puerto Rico has 15 overall titles in the Caribbean Series, and which is second to the Dominican Republic with 19. Morales said, the guy that with the winning sacrifice run, he said, "This is incredible. This is the biggest moment of my life. 16 years since the last time we won it. 16 years ago, I was a kid with no clue of what I wanted to do for a living. This is unreal." And I don't know. I think this is great for Puerto Rico. They haven't had a lot of success, in this Caribbean Series, especially, against Mexico. So I really am happy for Puerto Rico, and it's going to be exciting to see how they play in the World Baseball Classic coming up soon.
Have to see if they can carry over some of that momentum into March when they face the rest of the world instead of just the teams in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Yeah, and this is actually a pretty big win for Puerto Rico because Mexico teams have won 5 of the past 8 tournaments in the Caribbean Series. So this is a huge win for Puerto Rico in that regard. Mexico is one of the best countries for baseball in Latin America. So they're one of the top ones there, with Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. But as for the Baseball Classic, it looks like we're going to know the rosters for all 16 teams tonight, actually. So I'm actually kind of excited.
Definitely, and next week we'll be talking about the World Baseball Classic for some part of the show, and we'll have to talk about the rosters, who's on it, who's not on it, breakout athletes, potential, and just kind of like a preview of everything because it is coming up before us, and I love that we have this before the season starts because it gives us something to look forward to just before the season. Obviously, spring training's important, and it's fun to look at, but meaningful games before baseball season actually starts is obviously great.
Yeah, a 16-nation tournament. You can't get any better than that. And there actually have been some rules that were announced for this year's Baseball Classic. This is probably one of the thing I'm looking forward to is watching the American team. This is probably the best American squad since 2006. When Jim Leland was the manager there. So I think this is one of the top. I think it's going to be one of the top American squads we ever seen in a long time. We have a lot of star power there. Japan took titles in 06 and 09. And, of course, Dominican Republic won the 2013 tournament. So they're going to have some tough competition. They're going to have some tough competition. I'm really excited to see how America does, especially with this stacked roster against the pretty much against the world. So I am really excited to see that. I'm really excited to see how the rosters look. And, I'm very excited to see. That's all pretty much I can say. And, I think they believe there is 2 pools. 3 of them, actually. Pool A will be feature the Suwon, a Sky Dome in South Korea, the Netherlands, the Chinese, Taipei, and Israel. And as for Pool B, it will feature Japan. It will feature Australia and China. And Pool C, of course, will feature Team USA, the Dominican Republic, Canada, and Colombia. So, there's a lot to look forward to there. But I do want to end the episode on a feel-good story here. There was a kid in South Eland, Illinois, last Friday. He was severely attacked by another student, and he suffered a lot of facial fractures and other injuries. He was placed in a medically induced coma. Don't worry, this story gets better. I know I said this was a feel-good story, but this story gets better. So, first baseman Anthony Rizzo of the Cubs decided to, invite 12-year-old Henry Shipner, the kid that was severely beaten at his school, to watch batting practice and a game after hearing that he was a huge Cubs fan. So I think that's a really great idea from Anthony Rizzo, and this is the feel-good story I want to end on.
I do give him some credit for that. Really, just sort of, we see these stories all the time, and it's always a pleasure to see players stepping out and doing things like that.
Yeah, and I think this is a very good story to end the episode on. But man, I can't wait till we see the rosters for the Baseball Classic. We might talk about them next week, but we're actually going to start our division previews next week, actually, too. So you guys got to stay tuned for that. So, but that concludes our show, Ben. Very good episode, I might add. We're getting closer to the season, spring training. So we're going to have some really good content to talk about. I think we're going to have a lot more, too much content to talk about.
You can never have too much content.
Okay. But I thank you guys for tuning into the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. I'm Jeremiah.
My name is Ben.
And I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. You guys come back next week. I swear we're going to have a lot to talk about next week. Come back. All right, see you guys next week.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.